Hello and welcome back to The Sideline. I'm Rory Jones, and today I'm once again joined by Brazilian sports reporter, ESPN's Conrado Giulietti, to discuss the NFL's return to Brazil in 2025. So first things first, Conrado, bem-vindo. Welcome back to The Sideline. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, Rory. Oh, obrigado. Let's do this in Portuguese. Thank you for having me again.
Easy.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So let's get straight to it, I guess. The NFL has confirmed that it will once again be heading to São Paulo this season to stage its second ever game in Brazil, which will be at the Arena Corinthians. The Los Angeles Chargers, they've been revealed as the home team for this year's game. But what are your expectations ahead of this fixture, and how can the league build on the successes of last year when it staged its first ever game in São Paulo?
I was in New Orleans like in February during the Super Bowl week. And at that moment, we were expecting the announcement of Brazil having a game for the second straight season. Actually, we had inside information that during that week, probably when Peter O'Reilly, the international vice president of NFL, when he had his press conference, which is like traditional every week, that he would be announcing Brazil again. But we were there. We attended this press conference, ESPN Brazil's team that were covering the Super Bowl. But Peter just announced Australia as a new destination for NFL in 2026, which is great. And when we asked about São Paulo and Brazil, he said, yeah, we are still working on it. And I confess that at that moment, we start to feel a little worried about it. And then we learned that there were some issues that they were discussing at that time. I mean, we know from São Paulo, from the managers of the game in São Paulo, from the city, that they want to have a commitment, a longer commitment, like 4 years, a contract of 4 years. And in the other side, NFL just wants to do one more year with São Paulo, like year by year working on that. And then I would say weeks after that, we learned that Rio de Janeiro was trying to get the game, to have the game. And so this was the major issue. But in the end, like two or 3 weeks after that, after the Super Bowl, they announced, they confirmed, and we had this information, like, because to have the game in Brazil, to have the game in São Paulo, in Arena Corinthians, I know that NFL had to invest a lot, to put a lot of money to work on the structure, to the broadcast part of a game. So we knew at that moment that São Paulo would be again the city, and now Química Arena, which is Arena Corinthians, is the naming rights of the stadium, will receive. But now we have this also this information that maybe in the future we can discuss this. But I think Rio de Janeiro also will be in the game, to have the game maybe in 2026.
It's definitely interesting you mentioned that. According to The Athletic, actually, the NFL has been in talks with with Brazilian officials over, as you mentioned, signing more of a long-term deal to repeatedly stage games in Brazil. And according to reports also, that could mean staging up to 2 games a year in Brazil. Yeah. How significant a step do you think that would be if a deal such as that did come to fruition?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's a healthy competition when you have another city. And I think first time that I talked to you here, I think we mentioned something about Maracanã, because we do love football as well, not American football, and we know like how representative Maracanã is for the sports world. So to have NFL in Maracanã, it makes sense. Because when you think about Brazil, when you think about the World Cup that we had there in 2014, you think about Maracanã. So when Rio de Janeiro entered this competition, I think it's a good thing. The mayor of Rio de Janeiro, Eduardo Paes, recently he was in a conference. He said that is a done deal, that Rio de Janeiro will have NFL in 2026. I'm not sure if he could say that, but he did. And he said, hey, we cannot say that because it's not official yet. But I think it goes to Rio de Janeiro. I think we have two things to say about this. First of all, is Brazil is definitely a destination for NFL. I think there's no doubt about that. Every season we will have something in Brazil, as we will have this next season, this upcoming season in 2025. To have two games, to host two games, I think it depends directly to the fact that maybe we will have 18 regular season games, and I think this will be approved soon, because it's a chance, an opportunity to bring new money. NFL is bringing new money every season with deals with Netflix, Amazon Prime. Even those international games, they have a different deals. And I know because we, as ESPN, we have the rights to do NFL in Brazil, but for the international, we have a different discussion. So I think this will happen. If they have 18 games, I think Brazil has a chance to host two games, which would be amazing, incredible.
For multiple reasons, I guess it would be fantastic for the country, but also thinking back to last year's game in Sao Paulo when you had the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Green Bay Packers. I mean, that was obviously the first game to ever be staged in South America as well. And according to Sao Paulo's tourism board, last year's game delivered an economic impact of $61 million for the local region. And it also provided 12,500 jobs as well. So it really seems like you can see why Rio de Janeiro might also want to host their own game in the near future.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the tickets were not cheap to buy. And people bought like this. We already have some offers through agencies, official agencies, try to sell packages for the game in September, just to have an idea. But there's one aspect of the game that I want to bring to you in your audience. Last season, as a correspondent for ESPN, I have attended 20 something, I think 22 games, and the Super Bowl, some playoff games. And I'm Brazilian, so it's hard to try to be like neutral. But what I'm trying to say is what I felt there, the experience was like once in a lifetime experience. I mean, it was like a church. I mean, people in there in the stadium, they were in a communion. Regardless if they were Eagles fans, and a lot of Eagles fans travel from the United States to Brazil, Packers fans, but you could see a lot of jerseys, Patriots jersey, Denver jerseys, Pittsburgh Steelers jerseys. And in that moment, everybody was like living up a dream. You know, that's something that is not tangible, is not concrete, but it's something that definitely got the attention of NFL. I mean, I could see that. So there are two aspects. The commercial part of this, it was a success because they sold a lot of products, jersey. They did the experience during the week in São Paulo. Even the little issues that they had, like the field, the pitch, the traffic, because the teams were like far in NFL. The officials, the NFL officials were like based in the south of São Paulo, so they had like 1 hour, 2 hours of traffic to get to the stadium. Even those issues, I think, it was just little small issues if you compare to the atmosphere that we had in there.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting to look at the different successes. As you mentioned, financially, it seems almost like a no-brainer, definitely for Brazil.
Exactly.
And I think also that the fan aspect is particularly interesting as well. Also, just to touch on, I mean, as for yourself, you know, you're someone who's been covering the sport for quite some time, you know, providing commentary in Portuguese for ESPN. From your personal perspective, how does that feel to have covered the sport for quite an extended period of time, and now you're genuinely hearing that Brazil could be staging multiple games? You could potentially be seeing, you know, more than one game a year if that's potentially in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. this seemed so distant not so long ago, but now we've had one game in Sao Paulo last year. It's very much
Yeah,
becoming close to a reality, I guess.
yeah. It feels amazing. It feels amazing. I can't lie to you because this last season was like the confirmation that Brazil is part of NFL, and I'm saying that not just because of the game, but the way that they look to the Brazilian market. And as the only Brazilian correspondent working here, it's like they start to notice that we are in there. And I'm not saying that because of me. It's not personal. It's not myself as a reporter, but when I go to those games, I try to bring some aspects of the Brazilian culture. When I do an interview with a coach, with a player, with someone from their staff, I'm trying to establish a connection between Brazil, the sports culture in Brazil, and football, and NFL, American football. Even if they try to speak some words in Portuguese, uh, things like that. I'm start to feeling that we are in a different stage. It's just the beginning, but we are starting to be noticed. When I go there and I say, when I request an interview and I said, I'm from Brazil, now they look and say, okay, we gotta be aware that Brazil is here.
Obviously, after last year's game, I'm sure that the league has seen exponential growth, particularly after the Eagles and Packers played down there, and the Eagles are also going on to win the Super Bowl. But
That's a
what do
good
you think?
superstition, right? I'm sorry.
I was
Sorry to
yeah.
interrupt you.
No, you're
But it's a
fine.
good superstition. Like if you play in Brazil, if you win in Brazil, then you go to Super Bowl. Then you will win
Yeah.
the Super Bowl. I think Brazil will try to get this superstition now from
That
now.
was absolutely. I was definitely going to ask you that. In terms of obviously, we've had the Chargers already being revealed as their home team.
Uh-huh.
But I'm really interested to see who they're playing against because it seems like whoever wins this game is obviously going to go on and win the Super Bowl just like the Eagles did. So
There's a, I mean, from the owners' meeting that happened like 2 weeks ago, there is a information is not confirmed, but maybe Kansas City Chiefs will be the rival, the opponent, which is great. Can you imagine for the Brazilian audience to have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce there? It will be hard to get a ticket, not just because the Chiefs, but also because Taylor Swift fans, for sure, they will be there to cheer for Travis Kelce.
I mean, they're absolutely everywhere, aren't they? Honestly, I mean, there's a lot of Swifties in pretty much every country. That's just global. Talk about the
It
NFL going
is.
global.
It is.
But I do find it interesting to hear that there are 36 million fans in Brazil. I'm sure that number is still growing as we speak. But what do you personally think are some of the most effective ways, other than maybe staging international games, that the NFL can really appeal to these fans?
Yeah, the thing that we just had the announcement is two more franchises getting the Brazilian market. So we had so far the Dolphins, the New England Patriots, and now through the global market program, Detroit Lions and Philadelphia Eagles will be working with Brazil. Uh, as far as we are discussing here, I think just Detroit Lions, they just opened an Instagram page like Lions Brazil, and they are doing a lot of funny pieces with the lion, the mascot, like going around in different places in Brazil, in tourist places, Rio de Janeiro. So it's funny. It's funny. In a personal point of view, since we spoke last time, I'm working as well with the New England Patriots. I'm producing content to the Patriots in Portuguese. We started to do this 1 year ago when Patriots were announced as a franchise that can work with the Brazilian market. So I think so far we as New England Patriots, we are the only team that is producing a podcast in Portuguese, 100% in Portuguese, weekly,
Wow.
even during the off season. And in this podcast, the name is Semana Patriots, Patriots Week. Let's translate like that. We tried to bring some field football discussions, technical discussion, but also we have someone that Lara is her name. She's the responsible for the marketing in Brazil, so she brings every week news updates and everything that Patriots is working with Brazil initiatives. Last year we had 2 watch parties, and when you get the rights of working to a country like this global marketing programs, you can host watch parties, official watch parties. I've been to Brazil twice, in São Paulo and Belo Horizonte, doing these watch parties for like 50 or 500 people. In São Paulo, we had more, almost 700 people in there. So yeah, it feels great because it's also a way to connect with this new audience. Because when you mention 36 million people that at least know what NFL is, I think we have a lot of opportunities to grow this audience. For sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I've no idea where they get the number from, but I don't doubt it. I mean, that is a
Yeah,
sizable number. It's
they do. These numbers comes from NFL and the office in Brazil. Also, this is the other news. They just not just, but last season they opened an office. They opened an office in São Paulo. Like now, they have someone that represents NFL in Brazil full time, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow. I mean, it's rapid as well, all this development. I mean, in terms of literally 2 years ago, the NFL had never set foot in South America, and now we've got multiple games being held here. We've got Portuguese podcasts about the Patriots. I mean, that's fantastic to hear. I'm also curious, what's Portuguese for 28-3? What's
28-3.
There you go.
Or March 28th, which is this is the day that Patriots celebrates that amazing Super Bowl, unforgettable.
No, that would make a cool segment, maybe. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
fantastic to hear about that.
that's a great idea. Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's great to see. I mean, also speaking of the global markets program, I mean, you mentioned the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe there is some superstition there because they obviously played during the first week of the season. They played in São Paulo. They beat the Packers. They went on a quite an incredible run, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So maybe they are kind of like trying to just leave. They're trying to kind of double down on Brazil because they see it as like a lucky charm almost.
Yeah. I went to Philadelphia and Green Bay before the game during the off season when they were practicing because I was there to do content about the game. So I got the opportunity to interview the coaches, the players, and to be honest, I did not feel that they were excited to go to Brazil. It was like, okay, we got to go to Brazil. We got to travel like 10 hours or maybe more. I think to go from Green Bay to Brazil, they spent like 15 hours in a plane, which is not great for them. But after the experience, they changed the idea, the opinion. Like, I think you remember some declarations like AJ Brown say, hey, I'm worried because I heard if you go out with a watch, they're gonna rob you. So I don't know if I go with my family. A lot of negative comments that they made because they simply like that. They did not have information, the real information. But then afterwards, after the game, I remember some of the players saying, oh, this is amazing. I never heard. Like during the Brazilian anthem, I think it was the top moment of that night for me as well, when I was telling you about the feeling of a church. Because when the Brazilian anthem was sang by a Brazilian singer, everyone in the stadium were singing. And for the players, they were not, okay. When we have the American anthem here, they respect. We have the silence. It is an emotional moment, but in Brazil they were singing along, so it was amazing. And I remember the players saying, "Hey, I did not understand the words, but you could feel in your skin. It gave them chills because they can feel like, oh, this is something there's something going on here. So yeah, it was great.
I mean, speaking of the fan experience as well, I remember I found it really interesting when I spoke to you last year ahead of last year's game. When you were telling me about Arena Corinthians obviously being the home of Corinthians
Uh-huh.
and the superstition around the color green, basically you're not being able to wear any item of green clothing at all anywhere near the stadium. And I then found it particularly interesting that a couple of months later the NFL announces two green teams will be playing there in the Green Bay Packers and the
That's
Philadelphia
true.
Eagles,
Yeah.
which I found quite surprising if I'm honest. But it was interesting to see that the Eagles really did try and make an effort to engage with those
Uh-huh.
fans because for the first time in
They
their
play
history,
black.
they wore the black and white uniform. They wore the black helmets for the first time ever. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe that can go a long way. Maybe they've got a growing fan base in Sao Paulo just because of that.
Yeah, it's funny because we kind of anticipated this discussion, right? And in the end, we got two green teams over there. But yeah, I think it was nice from the Eagles to understand the culture. I think it was a nice gesture to like show kind of understanding about where they were going to. So it was funny. But in the end, there was no problem. It was just something fun to discuss, but it was just like that. It wasn't a big issue. I saw some people wearing obviously because of the Green Bay Packers wearing green jersey or a Piro or another part of the clothes green. So it wasn't a problem.
But in terms of the atmosphere and everything else associated with the game, I mean, it was a sellout crowd. Pretty sure they had pretty high TV audiences there in Brazil as well. And I think if they can really kind of iron out all those details with regards to the pitch, it could be an absolutely fantastic product, I guess, overall.
Absolutely, absolutely. We had three ESPN and two more uh, uh, televisions broadcasting for Brazil. We had the deal, I think, with Amazon Prime here in the U.S. because as I mentioned, they have different deals for the international games. So it was overall it was a success. I have no doubt. I know I'm the Brazilian one. Say, hey, come to Brazil, go to Brazil, but it is true. It is true. I think we'll have a better experience this year because I hope they learn with the little mistakes. And I think Chargers is excited to play, which is good, different from the first impressions that I got from Eagles and Packers. And also, if the Chiefs goes to Brazil, like there's this information, I think it will be good also because the Chiefs ownership, they want to be global. They want to be international. They have this kind of strategy to grow their fans, their fan base in the world. So it will be a win-win situation for Brazil, for NFL, win-win-win, and for the teams.
I do find it interesting coming back to Eagles and Packers, though, that you mentioned that you kind of got the impression from some of the players they weren't particularly excited about playing there, perhaps beforehand. But I think the Eagles franchise overall definitely seemed to have kind of taken last year's experience as like a huge positive when you think I mean, a few teams have done this as well in other markets, but they've gone on to actually acquire rights now in Brazil. And who knows, maybe they release a black helmet that's only available to buy in Sao Paulo
Yeah,
as well.
that's true. Yeah, and also if you get what happened in the field, like Saquon Barkley in that night had 3 touchdowns and was like something that, hey, look what's going on here. It was his first official game as a
Yeah.
Philadelphia Eagle, and he was pivotal to the Super Bowl that they had in the way that they had. And when they got to Brazil, there were a lot of discussions about Sirianni, the players, Jalen Hurts, the relationship between Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. And it was the first year without Jason Kelsey. So they got a lot of positive things going to Brazil. I think the travel to Brazil, and this is not me saying that, we heard that after the Super Bowl. The experience going there, going far, traveling like 10 hours, staying in a hotel for 2-3 days, it helped in certain ways to the team build what they built to win the championship in the end of the season.
I think another aspect I really like about the kind of Brazil game is the fact that for the second year also, it's going to be taking place in the first week of the season. I think it's going to be on the 5th of September this year. I think if the NFL can actually use that as a staple for every year to have an opening week of the season, you have a game in Brazil, I think that would be particularly cool to see that. If that develops as a tradition, that could be really interesting to see going forward.
Yeah, but there are some logistical reasons behind this also. Not just because it's long travel, like 10 hours, like I said, or 15 hours from Los Angeles. I would guess, I think it's 10 or 11 hours. We have direct flights from LA to São Paulo, but also all the equipments to travel those equipments, to ship those equipments. I think it makes sense to do this in the first week. I think they have more time to ship those stuff over there and then continue with the season. Because imagine if they do this in a fourth or fifth week of the season, the team has to get the bye week after that. I think it's the same that they are doing when they go to London. I think
so, yeah.
They used to get the bye week afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and now Australia in 2026 as well. Australia will be there with the Los Angeles Rams, which makes sense as well, to travel from LA to Australia. But when we had the approval for the 18 regular season games, I mean, that's what we are listening here in NFL. They will have 18 regular season games. They will have 2 bye weeks probably. So it makes sense. Maybe, I hope, they will discuss, as we said at the beginning, to have 2 games in Brazil.
Absolutely. I mean, I just find it fascinating when you think, I mean, on my last episode, we talked about the NFL expanding in Australia. And I think you've got all these markets now. I think, I mean, just looking ahead to this year, you've got Spain as a new market as well, to be hosting its first ever game in Madrid. You've got one game coming up in Germany again for I think the 3rd or 4th year in a row now. You've got the London games and, as you mentioned, also going to Australia next year. And, of course, going to Brazil. It really seems as though we're getting closer to the NFL becoming a truly global league, if you like.
Yeah. It is in a global perspective for sure when you go to the other countries. I still think, though, that the teams should be more open to be global, because sometimes I feel, and I'm putting out of this discussion, obviously, the teams that are working in Brazil, like Patriots, and not just because I'm working for them. Dolphins, they are doing a lot of things. Lions now and Eagles will be doing some initiatives for sure. But the other teams, I think they gotta be in, not just the organizations. I mean, from the players' perspective, from the coaches' perspective, they gotta understand now they are not just an American sport. As a correspondent, I'll go to NBA games regularly, and I see and I feel that NBA is more global now. Still is more global. Not just because basketball is a sport that is more, there's more presence of basketball in the world, but the players understand that some of the money that they get comes from this broadcast agreement overseas, not just in the United States. So if I go to a press conference, LeBron James press conference, there are Japanese reporters, there are Brazilian reporters, there are Spanish reporters, there are Mexican reporters, and they kind of understands that. I'm not trying to do a long story, but when I go there, I'm still feeling that as the only Brazilian guy over there, and sometimes the only guy that's not American.
Yeah.
If you bring a question like that is different from the game itself, like, hey, why you play like that? why they won in that way, if I bring something about culture, I feel that players and the other colleagues start to look at you and say, okay, this is not Inter's for them. This is my perspective. They have to be more open to understand that this is better, this is good for the game. In the end, it's good for everyone that is part of the game. You know what I mean?
I definitely agree. I think there's the NBA has been fantastic in expanding internationally. I mean, also when you think of even at grassroots level, I mean, when you look at the NBA now, you look at some of the best players there. You've got the likes of Luka Doncic, the likes of Giannis, Jokic as well.
Jokic, yeah.
I mean, it's like most of some of the most recent MVPs and the dominant players in the league all come from Europe, and you just think if the NFL could get to a stage where the sport at grassroots level is kind of similar to that, whether that's in Europe, whether that's in South America, in Australia, perhaps they could then kind of help produce, the next generation of players from outside of the US, and maybe that can also correlate with reporting as well in terms of exposure to international reporters, and hopefully maybe in 5-10 years time you might not be the only Portuguese speaking reporter there.
No, but it will make it easier for sure. You are absolutely right, because we have Jordan Mailata in Eagles, he's Australian. We have some German players, we have the Brazilian kicker in Chicago Bears, but it's not common. That's why I think also the initiative that NFL is doing to try to grow the flag football, I think is a good initiative, thinking about the future. In a long perspective, because you start to get the game more popular, more natural for the country. So definitely this is the next step, the next stage for the future to help grow the game globally, internationally.
Absolutely. Actually, you mentioned on flag. I know the NFL expanded the flag program to Brazil, I think in 2023, and they've already had 4,500 young people be involved in that. So that's fantastic to see as well, especially looking ahead to LA 28 when you're going to have flag football as a sport of the Olympics.
Yeah, and now they are saying that maybe some professional players, NFL players, want to be at the Olympics to play flag football, which is great. I think which is great for the sports. For the Olympics, but it's a challenge. I watched Roger Goodell speaking about that, because the calendar, it's kind of conflicts with the Olympics during the off-season moment, but that will be great. But it will be like I think if we compare, like we had the dream team in 92 of the basketball, playing against amateurs, because it will be way different. We have good flag teams like in Mexico, even in Brazil. The women national flag team in Brazil is really good, but if they play the professionals over there, I think it's a
bit of a ways to go.
It will be hard to win for sure.
But it's definitely interesting to see it going forward, though, and I guess it's something that can excite us all as NFL fans. But Conrado, really appreciate you taking the time to chat today, and it's been great to look ahead to the NFL coming back to Brazil again.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you for the opportunity. Whenever you want, and I'll be here. It's a pleasure to talk to you, to your audience, and let's go. We are excited to another game in Brazil, another season, and everything that is coming up in the near future.
And before I forget, I've got to say muito obrigado.
De nada. Thank you very much. You're welcome.